The alien council declared only the human male could save their bloodline asterisk David's. Awakening David Morrison felt the cold metal surface beneath his back before he opened his eyes. The last thing he remembered was walking home from his job at the construction site in downtown Chicago. Now, as consciousness slowly returned, he found himself in a place that defied all logic and reason. The room around him pulsed with an ethereal, purple light that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. As his vision cleared, David realized he was lying on what appeared to be an examination table in the center of a circular chamber. The walls curved upward into a dome, and strange symbols glowed along the surface in patterns that hurt his eyes to look at directly. The first encounter, before David could fully process his surroundings, a section of the wall slid away silently, revealing an opening. 3 figures glided into the room, moving with an otherworldly grace that made David's heart skip a beat. They were humanoid in shape, but clearly not human. Their skin had a silvery blue tint that shimmered under the purple light, and their eyes were large and luminous, filled with an intelligence that seemed ancient beyond measure. The tallest of the 3 stepped forward, her movements fluid and precise. She wore what looked like a form-fitting garment that seemed to be made of liquid metal, shifting and flowing as she moved. When she spoke, her voice carried musical tones that resonated strangely in David's mind. "The human male has awakened," she announced to her companions. "Prepare him for transport to the High Council chamber." Questions without answers, David tried to sit up, but his limbs felt heavy and unresponsive. What the hell is going on? He managed to croak, his voice sounding foreign to his own ears. "Where am I? Who are you people?" The tall figure approached him, her luminous eyes studying him with scientific interest. "You are David Morrison, age 32, construction worker from the city you call Chicago. You have been selected for a purpose of utmost importance." Selected for what? David's mind reeled as he tried to make sense of the situation. This has to be some kind of dream or hallucination. Aliens don't exist. A second figure, shorter than the first, but equally graceful, moved closer. Her skin had a more pronounced blue tint, and when she spoke, her voice carried a hint of what might have been compassion. "Your species has much to learn about the universe, David Morrison. We have been observing your kind for many cycles, studying your development, your potential." The journey begins without further explanation. The 3 beings helped David to his feet. His legs felt unsteady, but their grip was surprisingly gentle, despite their obvious strength. They guided him through corridors that seemed to stretch infinitely in all directions, filled with the same pulsing purple light. As they walked, David caught glimpses of other chambers through transparent walls. Some contained what looked like laboratories with equipment beyond his comprehension. Others held gardens filled with plants that seemed to glow with their own inner light. The technology around him was so advanced that it might as well have been magic. The council chamber finally, they arrived at a massive circular chamber with a domed ceiling that seemed to stretch up into infinity. In the center of the room stood a raised platform surrounded by 12 ornate chairs, each occupied by a being, similar to his escorts, but with subtle differences in their appearance and bearing. The one who sat in the highest chair rose as David was brought forward. Her presence commanded immediate attention, and David felt a mixture of awe and terror as her piercing gaze fixed upon him. Her skin was a deeper shade of blue than the others, and intricate patterns of silver traced along her arms and face. "David Morrison of Earth," she began, her voice echoing through the chamber with undeniable authority. "You stand before the High Council of Zephoria. We have brought you here because our civilization faces a crisis that threatens our very existence." David's mouth went dry as the implications of her words began to sink in. Whatever these beings wanted from him, it was clear that his life would never be the same again. The Council's dilemma, High Council member who had spoken stepped down. From her elevated position, moving with the same fluid grace that all of her kind seemed to possess. As she approached David, he could see the weight of countless years in her luminous eyes, along with something else that surprised him: desperation. "I am Counselor Valara," she said, her voice carrying the authority of leadership, but also an underlying urgency. "What I am about to tell you will change your understanding of everything you thought you knew about life in the universe." David found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "What do you want from me? Why am I here?" Valara gestured to the other council members, and David noticed for the first time that they were all female. Every single being he had encountered since awakening had been female. The realization sent a chill down his spine as he began to understand the implications. The genetic crisis. Our species has thrived for over 10,000 of your Earth years. Valara continued, beginning to pace around David as she spoke. "We have built a civilization that spans multiple star systems, achieved technological advances that your species can barely comprehend, and maintained peace across our empire for millennia." She paused, her expression growing somber. "But all of our achievements mean nothing if we cannot survive as a species. 50 years ago, a genetic mutation began appearing in our population. At first, it seemed harmless, even beneficial. Our children were born stronger, more intelligent, with enhanced abilities." Another council member, one with distinctive violet markings on her forehead, stood and joined the explanation. "I am Counselor Nathara. The mutation we speak of has had an unexpected consequence. While our females continue to thrive, our males have been affected differently." The horrible truth David felt his stomach drop as Nathara continued. "The mutation has made it impossible for our males to reproduce. Those who were born with it are sterile. Those who developed it later lost their ability to father children. In the past 50 years, no Zephyrian male has successfully produced offspring." The chamber fell silent, except for the soft humming of the technology around them. David stared at the council members, trying to process what he was hearing. "So your entire species is dying out?" "Not dying," Valara corrected, "but facing extinction within 2 generations if we cannot find a solution. We have tried everything: genetic therapy, cloning, artificial reproduction. Nothing has worked. The mutation seems to actively resist our attempts to circumvent it." The solution they sought. Counselor Nathara moved closer to David, her expression intense. "Our scientists have been studying other species throughout the galaxy, searching for genetic compatibility that might offer a solution. Most species are too different from us to be viable. But humans are remarkably similar to us in many ways." "You're talking about crossbreeding," David said, the reality of his situation finally becoming crystal clear. "You want me to?" "To help us save our species," Valara finished. "Your genetic material is compatible with ours. More than compatible, it's ideal. The combination of human and Zephyrian DNA could not only restore our ability to reproduce, but potentially create a new generation that is stronger than either species alone." The weight of choice. David took a step back, his mind reeling from the magnitude of what they were asking. This is insane. You can't just kidnap someone and expect them to become some kind of breeding stock for your entire species. A third council member, one with intricate golden patterns along her neck, spoke for the first time. "I am Counselor Zephyra. We understand your distress, David Morrison. This is not a decision we made lightly. We have debated for years about the ethics of what we are asking." "But you did it anyway," David said, anger beginning to replace his shock. "You took me from my home, my life, without my consent. Because the alternative is the extinction of billions of lives." Valara replied, her voice heavy with the weight of responsibility. "We do not ask this of you lightly. We know the sacrifice we are requesting is enormous. The impossible decision counselor Nithara stepped forward, her expression softening slightly. We are not monsters, David. We do not wish to force you into anything. But we also cannot simply let our civilization die without exploring every possible option. What if I say no? David asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. The council members exchanged glances, and Velara sighed deeply. Then we will explore other options. There are other human males who might be compatible. But David, you are our best hope. Your genetic profile is uniquely suited to our needs. David felt the weight of billions of lives pressing down on him. These beings had built a civilization that spanned the stars, achieved wonders beyond imagination, and now they were facing extinction. And somehow, impossibly, he held the key to their survival. The question that haunted him was whether he could live with himself if he said no, and whether he could live with himself if he said yes. The chambers of contemplation David found himself in quarters that were more luxurious than any hotel he had ever seen. The walls were a soft, luminescent blue that seemed to respond to his emotional state, growing brighter when he was agitated and dimming when he tried to relax. Through what appeared to be a window, he could see the vastness of space dotted with stars that seemed impossibly bright and close. 2 days had passed since his encounter with the High Council, and they had given him time to process their request. But instead of clarity, David found himself more confused than ever. The weight of their civilization's survival rested on his shoulders, and the pressure was becoming unbearable that an unexpected visitor, a soft chime, announced the arrival of a visitor. The door slid open to reveal a Zephyrian woman David hadn't seen before. She was younger than the council members, with skin that held a warm, golden tint and eyes that seemed to hold genuine kindness rather than the desperate urgency he had seen in the others. I am Kira, she said, stepping into the room with a less formal bearing than the others. I am what you might call a cultural liaison. I have been studying your species for many years, and I was asked to help you understand our perspective. David looked up from where he sat on the edge of the bed. Let me guess. You're here to convince me to agree to their plan. Kira shook her head, surprising him. Actually, I'm here to make sure you understand exactly what you would be agreeing to, and what the consequences would be if you refuse. The Council believes in informed consent, even in desperate circumstances. The full truth Kira moved to the window, gazing out at the stars. What the Council didn't tell you is that you wouldn't be the only one making sacrifices. The females who would participate in this program would be giving up their freedom as well. They would be dedicating their lives to bearing and raising a new generation. How many? David asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Initially 50, Kira replied. If the process is successful, potentially hundreds more. Each child would need to be carefully monitored, studied, and raised in a specific environment to ensure the genetic combination is stable. David felt sick. You're talking about creating a factory for producing hybrid children. I'm talking about survival, Kira said firmly. But I want you to understand that this isn't just about biology. These children would be the future of our species. They would need to be raised with love, care, and understanding of both their human and Zephyrian heritage. The personal cost. Kira turned from the window to face David directly. The Council also didn't mention what this would mean for you personally. You would essentially become the most important person in our civilization. You would be protected, honored, given anything you desired, but you would never be free to leave. A gilded cage, David murmured. Perhaps, but also a position of incredible influence. Your children would look to you as their father, their human heritage. You would help shape the next generation of our species. David stood and began pacing, his mind racing. What about my life on Earth? My family? My friends? They'll think I'm dead. They already do. Kira said gently. We had to stage your disappearance to avoid questions. As far as Earth is concerned, David Morrison died in an industrial accident. The alternative path, the revelation hit David like a physical blow. His old life was already gone, whether he agreed to help or not. So what happens if I refuse? Kira's expression grew grave. We would return you to Earth, but with altered memories. You would remember nothing of this encounter. We would then approach other candidates until we found someone willing to help. And if no one agrees, then we continue to search while our species slowly dies out. We estimate we have perhaps 70 years before we reach the point of no return. David slumped back onto the bed, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the decision before him. This is impossible. How can anyone make a choice like this? The moment of understanding Kira sat beside him, her presence somehow comforting despite the alien nature of their circumstances. David, I want you to know that many of us on the council argued against this approach. We felt it was wrong to place such a burden on any individual, but you're doing it anyway. Because the alternative is extinction. Not just for us, but for everything our civilization has achieved. Our art, our science, our philosophy, all of it would be lost forever. David looked at her, seeing the genuine anguish in her eyes. Why me? Out of all the humans on Earth, why was I chosen? Your genetic profile is ideal, yes, but that's not the only reason, Kira admitted. Our psychological profiles suggested you would be able to handle the emotional and mental challenges better than most. You're adaptable, resilient, and you have a strong moral compass. The weight of worlds, as the implications of his situation continued to sink in, David realized that his choice would affect not just himself, or even the Zephyrian species, but potentially the entire future of two civilizations. The hybrid children that might result from this program could become a bridge between worlds, combining the best of both species. I need more time, David said finally. Kira nodded. Of course. But David, I want you to know that whatever you decide, you won't be alone. If you agree to help us, there will be people who care about you, who will support you through this process. As she left him alone with his thoughts, David stared out at the stars and wondered if he was strong enough to carry the weight of two worlds on his shoulders. The council's patience. 3 more days passed in David's luxurious quarters, and he found himself growing more restless with each passing hour. The Zephyrians had been true to their word about giving him time to think, but the weight of indecision was becoming unbearable. Every moment he delayed was another moment their civilization moved closer to extinction. During this time, he had received several more visits from different council members, each offering their own perspective on the situation. Councillor Valara had shared the historical records of their species' greatest achievements. Councillor Naithara had shown him projections of what would happen if they couldn't find a solution. Each conversation only made the decision more complex. Different perspective on the 4th day, David received an unexpected visitor. Unlike the others, this Zephyrian was male, the first he had encountered since his arrival. The being was tall and slender, with the same luminous skin as the females, but with broader shoulders and a more angular face. His presence immediately raised questions in David's mind. I am Jorek, the male said, his voice carrying the same musical quality as the others, but with a deeper resonance. I am one of the few remaining fertile males of our species, though my time is limited. David studied him carefully. You're affected by the mutation? I will be soon, Jorek replied. The genetic degradation is progressive. I may have months, perhaps a year, before I too become sterile. I wanted to speak with you before that happens. The male perspective of Jorek moved to the window, his posture reflecting a weight that seemed to go beyond physical. I understand the burden they have placed on you, David. As one of the last of my kind, I feel the pressure of our species' survival every moment of every day." "Then you understand why this is so difficult," David said. "The responsibility is overwhelming." "Yes, but I also understand something that council members cannot," Jorik continued. "What it means to be the key to survival. Every day, I wonder, if I should spend my remaining fertile time trying to father as many children as possible, or if I should live what's left of my normal life." David felt a connection to this being that he hadn't experienced with the others. "What did you decide?" "I chose to try," Jorik said simply. "In the past year, I have fathered 12 children. Each birth was a celebration, but also a reminder that I am becoming less myself and more of a biological function." The transformation, the honesty in Jorik's words struck David deeply. "Do you regret it?" "Some days, yes. The pressure is immense. And the knowledge that your primary value to society is your reproductive capacity can be degrading. But then I see my children, and I remember that they represent hope for our entire species." Jorik turned from the window to face David directly. "But you have an opportunity that I never had. You can negotiate the terms of your involvement. You can ensure that you remain more than just a biological function." "What do you mean?" "The council needs you more than you need them. You have leverage, David. Use it." A plan formed that evening. David requested a formal meeting with the High Council. When he entered the chamber, he found all 12 members present, their expressions a mixture of hope and anxiety. Councillor Velara stepped forward as their spokesperson. "Have you reached a decision, David Morrison?" "I have," David replied, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to say. "But I have conditions." A murmur passed through the council, and Velara's expression grew cautious. "What conditions?" "First, I want to be involved in every aspect of this program. I'm not just a genetic donor. I'm a partner in creating the future of your species. I want input into how the children are raised, how the program is structured, and how decisions are made." The negotiations counselor Nithara leaned forward. "That is unprecedented. No single individual has ever had such influence over a civilization-wide program." "Then maybe it's time for a precedent," David replied firmly. "These children will be half-human. They'll need someone who understands that side of their heritage." "What else?" Velara asked. "I want regular communication with Earth. I want to know what's happening to my species. And I want the option to share knowledge between our civilizations, carefully and gradually." The council members exchanged glances. Such a request had massive implications for their policy of non-interference with developing civilizations. The final terms. "My third condition," David continued, "is that this program must be voluntary for everyone involved. Any Zephyrian female who participates does so by choice, not obligation. And they must understand exactly what they're agreeing to." "And if we accept these conditions?" Counselor Zephyra asked. David took a deep breath. "Then I agree to help save your species. But I do it as a partner, not as a captive." The agreement the council deliberated for nearly an hour before Velara returned with their decision. "We accept your conditions, David Morrison. You will be granted unprecedented authority in the hybrid program, with the understanding that the survival of our species depends on its success." As the formal agreements were made, David felt a mixture of relief and terror. He had just agreed to father a new generation of beings that would bridge 2 worlds. The responsibility was staggering, but for the first time since his arrival, he felt like he had some control over his destiny. "When do we begin?" he asked. "Tomorrow," Velara replied. "Welcome to the future, David Morrison. May it be brighter than either of our species could achieve alone." The new beginning 6 months had passed since David's agreement with the High Council, and the hybrid program had begun in earnest. The first phase had been surprisingly complex, involving not just biological procedures, but extensive psychological preparation for all participants. David had worked closely with a team of Zephyrian scientists and philosophers to develop a framework for raising children who would belong to both worlds. The first group of volunteers had been carefully selected from thousands of applicants. Each Zephyrian female who chose to participate underwent months of preparation, learning about human culture, psychology, and biology. David insisted on meeting each of them personally, ensuring they understood the magnitude of what they were undertaking. The first success, Dr. Leon, the chief geneticist overseeing the program, approached David with news that would change everything. Her silver-blue skin seemed to shimmer with excitement as she entered his expanded quarters, which had been converted into a combination living space and cultural center. "David, the first genetic compatibility tests are complete," she announced, her voice carrying a barely contained joy. "Not only are the combinations viable, but the preliminary results exceed our most optimistic projections." David looked up from the human literature he had been translating into Zephyrian. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means the hybrid children will possess advantages from both species. Enhanced physical capabilities from our side, combined with the adaptability and creativity that makes humans so remarkable. They may be the key not just to our survival, but to our evolution." The deeper responsibility. The news was thrilling, but it also deepened David's sense of responsibility. These children wouldn't just be the future of the Zephyrian species. They would be something entirely new. The weight of shaping their identity and culture fell heavily on his shoulders. Kira, who had become his closest friend and cultural advisor, joined him that evening as he stood looking out at the stars. "You're thinking about the children again," she observed. "How did you know?" "You get the same expression every time you consider the magnitude of what we're creating. It's a mixture of wonder and terror." David smiled grimly. "That's about right. Sometimes I wonder if we're playing God with genetics." "Perhaps we are," Kira replied. "But sometimes playing God is the only way to prevent extinction." The first birth 9 months after the program began, David received the call he had been both anticipating and dreading. The first hybrid child was being born. He rushed to the medical facility, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The birthing chamber was filled with soft, warm light and the most advanced medical technology the Zephyrians possessed. Serena, the mother, was a young scientist who had volunteered specifically because she believed in the program's potential. She had spent months preparing for this moment, both physically and emotionally. When the child emerged, David felt his breath catch in his throat. The baby was clearly a perfect blend of both species. Human features softened by Zephyrian grace, skin that held a subtle luminescence, and eyes that seemed to hold intelligence beyond their years. The moment of recognition. "She's perfect," Serena whispered, tears streaming down her face as she held the baby girl. "Look at her, David. She's the future." David approached carefully, his emotions overwhelming him. When the child looked up at him, he saw something that made his heart skip a beat. She was looking at him with recognition, as if she somehow knew who he was and what he represented. "What will you name her?" he asked Serena. "I thought, perhaps, you should choose. She is as much human as she is Zephyrian." After a moment of consideration, David spoke. "Hope. Her name is Hope." The expanding program over the following months, more hybrid children were born. Each one was unique, combining different aspects of both species in fascinating ways. Some showed enhanced physical capabilities, others displayed remarkable intellectual gifts, and a few exhibited abilities that neither species had ever possessed. David found himself becoming not just a genetic father, but a cultural one as well. He spent hours with each child, teaching them about human history, art, and philosophy. He wanted them to understand both sides of their heritage equally. Zephyrian mothers also played crucial roles, sharing their own rich cultural traditions and advanced knowledge. The children were growing up truly bilingual and bicultural, belonging fully to both worlds. The transformation of society. As the hybrid program progressed, it began to change Zephyrian society in unexpected ways. The presence of these new children, with their unique perspectives and abilities, sparked a renaissance of creativity and innovation. Art, science, and philosophy all experienced revolutionary advances. David found himself at the center of this transformation. The High Council had made him an official cultural ambassador, and his influence extended far beyond the hybrid program. He was helping to shape the future of an entire civilization. "You've become more than we ever imagined," Counselor Valara told him during one of their regular meetings. "You're not just saving our species, you're helping us evolve." The bridge between worlds. As the first hybrid children grew and developed, they began to display remarkable abilities to understand and connect with both species. They served as natural translators, not just of language, but of concepts and emotions. They were becoming the bridge between worlds that David had hoped they would be. Young Hope, now 3 years old, demonstrated this most clearly. She could communicate equally well with humans and Zephyrians, understanding nuances that adults from either species might miss. She was the living proof that the program was succeeding beyond their wildest dreams. The legacy 5 years after David's arrival, the hybrid program had produced over 100 children, and the Zephyrian species was no longer facing extinction. But more than that, they had created something entirely new, a generation that belonged to both worlds and could potentially unite them. David stood in his quarters, now surrounded by artwork created by hybrid children, books written by Zephyrian scholars about human culture, and communications from Earth expressing wonder at the technological advances that had been carefully shared with them. He had come to the stars as a reluctant captive, but he had become something far more significant, the father of a new species, the bridge between two worlds, and the architect of a future that neither humanity nor the Zephyrians could have achieved alone. As he watched the stars through his window, David smiled. The choice he had made, as difficult as it was, had led to something beautiful, a future where two species could grow together, creating something greater than either could have achieved alone. The hybrid children would carry both legacies forward, ensuring that the best of both worlds would survive and thrive among the stars.